and I'm Director of Services with responsibility for community and social inclusion. So I want to welcome you all here this evening for the second of our online community safety forums. I suppose we're very much aware that the absence of the community safety forums on the ground was kind of keenly felt by a lot of people. So I suppose to try and establish communication channels and to allow people to feed their issues into us and for us to kind of feed back to other people. We've, over the last few weeks, we've worked very closely with our colleagues in Garda Síochána to bring this to fruition. And I want to thank Garda Síochána for all the work that they've done with us. And I want to welcome Superintendent Colm O'Sullivan and his colleagues across the board there that are with us this evening, and I'm sure you'll hear from them shortly. So I suppose I'm very much aware that tonight's solution is probably not the perfect solution by any stretch of the imagination, but again, as I had explained, I think it was that communication, there was a lack of communication which we felt it was important maybe to kind of bridge that gap. So there were 3 forums this week, one last night, one this evening and one tomorrow night with Cork South. So Cork North took place last night. I suppose I also want to thank the Community Safety Forum chairs on Garda Síochána, my own colleagues in community and social inclusion, but also you as elected representatives for pushing the message out there to everybody across the community. We had over 150 submissions, and I think, you know, it was great to see that level of interest and engagement. So I want to thank you all for that and for getting the message out there. I suppose the format for tonight and the running order will be, I will hand over to Garda Síochána first, maybe to look at the issues that were submitted. And I suppose just to advise that there would have been some duplication of submissions, and Garda Síochána and ourselves and our responses will be pooling those responses for, you know, the duplication and the replication, but hopefully we won't miss anything and we'll address everything that was actually submitted to us. At the end, I suppose Cork City Council will then deal with the issues, and then after that I'll allow some time for people maybe to make some comments or add some reflections or maybe clarifications. But what I would ask is, if there are questions that have not been submitted previously, if there are fresh questions, we'd be encouraging people to feed them back through the Community Safety Forum chairs, and then they'll feed them to us, and vice versa. We'll keep that communication channel open. So so we'll work closely together, and we'll try and keep the responses going. So we'll be following up with our colleagues internally. Garda Síochána will be doing the same. So as I said at the outset, it's a beautiful evening. I don't want to keep you all any longer than necessary, so we'll try and have this done in an hour if possible. Just at the end, when you are actually making your comments or if you're looking for clarifications, I'm going to set a timer for 2 minutes. I don't mean to be rude, but it's just a prompt for everybody. So look, that'll just help. So I hope you don't mind and indulge me on that one. So I suppose just lastly, before I hand over now to Superintendent Colm O'Sullivan, could I just ask that everybody who's not speaking might go on mute, and we can begin the meeting. So thank you very much. And Colm, with that, I might hand over to you. You're on mute there, Colm. Colm, you're still on mute. There you go.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay. Adrian, I don't know whether you have the issues log there or not that came in that you can bring up on the screen. Do you have it, or?
Colm, I don't have that facility at the moment. I'd have had to have that line beforehand. If you just give me a minute, I'll see what I can do in the background. Just a moment.
Okay. Well, look, just from some of the issues that were brought up there as part of the submissions in terms of the city centre area, which would include the college area, the Loch, the city centre, Kennedy Quay, Blackrock. One of the concerns that was being raised by the community was in terms of the statutory instruments and the movement of persons and the events and dwellings and so on and so forth. And there was a new statutory instrument came out on the 10th of, and this is all to do with the COVID regulations now. and addressing the issues that are arising out of the pandemic. And first thing that I would say is that this is all to do with public health in terms of limiting the exposure of people to COVID-19. And as I said, new regulations came in the 10th of May, and the restrictions on movement of persons across the country were lifted on that day, but there's still restrictions on, I don't really want to use the word restrictions, but there are limitations in the number of people that can attend an event in the private dwelling. And just to give a picture of where we were up to the 10th of May, fines on the spot became applicable from mid-January 2021. And in that time frame, in the Anglesey Street area, there were 888 fines issued to people who breached the regulations in terms of movement of people. And a significant number of those were in and around the Bridewell sub-district, which would include the Lock area. And then there were further over 220 tickets issued for people attending events in dwellings. So, and they would start to go hand in hand. Those restrictions, and I know it's one of the questions that has been asked, is will the restrictions be in place over the summer in terms of addressing issues that may arise in the College Road area? And the bottom line is I don't know at this time. The existing regulations are in force up to a date in June. Okay, and I'm just looking, sorry now, just bear with me. At the moment they're in date until the 2nd of June, but previous experience has been that they've been extended continuously by ministerial regulation. And I know it was announced on the radio there that, you know, there's talks of extending it out until November, but until the decision has been made on that, I can't answer that question as to whether they're going to be extended out any further or not at that time. In relation to crime in the city centre, there has been a significant reduction in crime over the last 12 months, and that is reflected in our crime figures, and there have been reductions across all levels of crime, no matter what they were, whether it was burglaries, whether it was assaults, whether it was in criminal damage. Where there has been an increase in detections is in the drug area. There have been significant increases in detections in drugs in the Cork City Centre area, but that is where there has been the increase. So then I know that antisocial behaviour, and you know there's issues coming up about the city centre reopening. We're working with the business community and with the local authority, the city council, and that in developing plans to address issues that may arise, but until such time as we have, and I know there was a bit of talk today as to what's going to happen, we just need more clarity on that at this stage to see what the government envisage, or how the government envisage the country is going to reopen. So until I have more details than that, you know, they'll then dictate, or they'll feed into the plans that we have in terms of managing the response into the city centre reopening. So Adrian, that's all I have to say at the moment. If anybody wants to quiz me on something, feel free. That's what I'm here for.
Thanks, Colm. And I suppose, I don't know if any of your other colleagues wanted to come in. I suppose a point maybe that was raised last night was around clarification on reporting any issues, be they antisocial behaviour or crimes in relation to drugs, etc. And there was some discussion about, you know, people were using things like Facebook, you know, to promote things like that. So I suppose the message from last night, and I don't know if you want to comment on it, Colm, or your colleagues, was that it's preferable that people would contact An Garda Síochána directly, rather than using those channels of communication. Would that be correct?
Yeah, 100%, because ultimately, if we're not aware of it, we're the people that are tasked with dealing with those issues. And the way we deal with it is we become aware of it first of all, and then we go out and tackle the issue. But if it's not reported into us, there are a number of risks involved in that. First of all, does someone go out to try and deal with it themselves, which they shouldn't do, and they can't do, and that could lead to further complications. It could lead to a destruction of evidence. It could lead to interference with a criminal justice process. So we'll say, I see something, I ring the guards, somebody else sees it, they decide not to ring the guards, they'll deal with themselves. That could impact on the evidence gathering that is essential in terms of tackling that problem. So if there is anything that anybody sees, we would please ask them to contact the guards and let the guards deal with it. We're the people tasked with it, we're the people that have the statutory responsibility for it. So it's important that it is reported into us and that we deal with it appropriately.
Thanks, Colin. And I suppose as part of the conversations also last night, I mean, it was suggested that maybe there are so many numbers now that people, they're not sure whether they should ring 999 or they should ring a COVID helpline or whatever. I think there was kind of a suggestion that maybe we might work with An Garda Síochána around some messaging that we could kind of push out maybe to local communities, just to bring a bit of clarity about the message as to who they should contact and when they should contact them, etc. So if you thought that was useful, then we could certainly work with you on that.
Well, certainly in relation to, and the 999 system is for emergencies. And the 999 system not only handles calls for the guards, it also handles calls for the ambulance service and the fire service. There are 3 centres in Ireland that handle 999 calls for the country, one in Donegal, one in Navan and one in Dublin. So every 999 call that is made goes into those centres and then it is distributed to the relevant service. There are 4 relevant services, first being the guards, then you have the ambulance service, then you have the fire service, and the final one is the Coast Guard. But if a person doesn't state what service they require, it is transferred automatically into the guards, and it's the guards then have to speak to that person and determine what service they require. And if I could give an example of somebody, and I don't know whether anybody has had reason to ring the ambulance service on a 999 call, the ambulance service will actually stay on the line with you until such time as the ambulance arrives and will talk to the person and give them advice on how to deal with the casualty. So that's all eating into, and it's necessary, but it's eating into the time that is spent in dealing with that 999 call. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because that's why it's so important that that call should be dealt with or held for emergencies. So if it's something that is not an emergency, you should contact your local Garda station. And for the city area, the stations you should be contacting are Anglesey Street, Granabraher, Mayfield, Toker, or the Brightway. Because they're the stations that are manned 24 hours a day. So if it's something, any one of those stations can take the call. You ring those stations, and then they will dispatch the relevant response for the relevant area. And what happens is when a call is reported into those stations, it's entered onto a computer which is called our CAD system, and that automatically triggers into the regional communication centre here in Anglesey Street, and the car is dispatched then from there, or the beat personnel are dispatched from there to deal with the relevant call.
Okay, thanks for that, Colin. So what I might do now is I might hand you over to Martha. I'm actually I can't upload it, but I'm looking at the issues sheet here, and I suppose a lot of the areas that you've raised there, Colin, like UCC and the lock, obviously the drug taking, the antisocial behaviour, I think you've kind of broadly covered a lot of them. Martha, I might hand over to you from the community side of the house.
Sure, thanks, Adrian. Just before I start, I suppose just to say there is some perceived overlap in the areas that we're covering tonight. So today is Cork City Centre and tomorrow is Cork South, and it's a little bit counterintuitive. So where there are issues that I think might overlap, I'll just name them both, and I can also speak to them tomorrow night as well. So I'm going to kick off with some submissions around Magazine Road and surrounding areas where there's a very serious issue with litter, overflowing bins, and just residents calling for ongoing policing and inspection of the serious health hazard. So our colleagues in cleansing have just iterated that this area is considered a hotspot for the purposes of their operations, which means that the area is inspected regularly, given priority when required. There's a flying squad monitoring the area Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays as agreed, suction sweeper servicing the area on Wednesdays, illegal dumping investigation squad in the area Monday and Fridays, regular foot patrol by the litter warden, And it has been noted by the area litter warden that a great improvement has been noted in regards to the presentation of weights and litter. 2 litter fines being issued and processed for overloaded wheelie bins in the area. Ongoing work being done with 2 property owners to ensure graffiti walls are painted, and all calls submitted to the CSU are closed out as soon as possible. And then I guess in a similar vein, quite a lot of feedback around dog waste on the footpaths around the loch. So there's been an enhanced anti-dog fouling awareness campaign launched in March of this year. Some of you may remember that the Lord Mayor was very involved in launching that. And that involved messaging across local radio stations, advertising on bus shelter networks, and kind of promotion of responsible dog ownership. And it's important that that message around responsible dog ownership is impressed upon the next generation. So the Lord Mayor wrote to every primary school in the city, inviting them to participate in this year's primary school anti-dog fouling poster competition. So in addition to all of that, the litter warden service will be carrying out enforcement activities to combat the antisocial behaviour of dog fouling, which is left to happen by a minority of irresponsible dog owners. The council's network of public litter bins can all be used to dispose of dog fouling. And as with all forms of littering, personal responsibility must play a part in the solution. And if public bins are not in the vicinity, the council would ask that the person in charge of the dog should clean it up and bring it home with them and dispose of it in their own bin. Okay, so I've got a few parking issues just to note. I just wanted people to know that we have taken note of these parking issues. Like, really what will happen here is that I report them on to the parking enforcement officer within the council, and so this will be brought to the attention of parking wardens, who then will keep this on their routes. So I have O'Leary's Place on Barrack Street. There were concerns there. I have sorry, I just want to make sure that everyone knows I'm paying attention. Turner's Cross, especially when there are matches on, there's a lot of concern that grassed areas adjacent to, we'll say, the Mace and the AIB Bank is continuously used for parking. So that's been noted by, as I said, the parking enforcement officer. People, and just there's a bit of overlap here, but just in parks areas as well, there's been a few notifications of illegal parking around the city's parks facilities. So that's the primary, those are the primary areas of concern for parking. Okay, there was some query around the area around Magazine Road and surrounding areas. Kind of a feeling that there was a real requirement for regeneration plan for the area, and that there was young couples kind of unable to compete with landlords who were housing students in the area, and just query around what plans Cork City Council have put in place to maintain a family-friendly, sustainable community. I suppose what we would say around there is, obviously this is a problem that's reflecting issues that arise in housing and accommodation sphere across the country, and again, a concern that's replicated in many areas in the city, particularly around, we'll say, UCC and MTU. There is a link here, and I suppose what we can be proactive in doing, there's a link here with issues in kind of housing tenure policies within the housing and communities section of the development plan. So the draft development plan will be out for consultation from July 26th to early October, and we would really encourage citizens to make submissions in this regard. It's a really key strategic planning document for our council and our city. So just keep an eye out for that. As I said, towards the end of July, that will be out for submissions, and you will be able to do that online or in old-fashioned pen or paper, but I'm sure there'll be a lot of publicity around that at the time. So a few people had made note of where yellow lines have kind of been worn away or have vanished outside of residential properties. I've taken note of, obviously I'm not going to talk about specific properties just now, but I've passed those on to our colleagues in engineering, so they'll be added to a list where works need to be lined up. Some queries around park lighting in Connacht Avenue because of trees obstructing the lights, and also in Connacht Avenue and the wall under the railings of the park in Connacht Avenue. There was some concern around the condition of that wall. That has been referred on to our colleagues in engineering, both in lighting and in operations, to follow up on that. Road surfacing near St Mary's of the Isle in near St. Finbarr's Cathedral, and there was concern around uneven surfaces. I've actually spoken to the engineer in this instance, and I know that this has come through one of our existing community safety forum chairs. The issue there is actually to determine whether the road in question has been taken in charge of Cork City Council. So as it turns out, that engineer has been in conversation and in dialogue with the convent themselves as to whether there's a process whereby they would need to relinquish control of the road. So I would say that dialogue is ongoing, and it's certainly live, and the engineer is all over that. So that should hopefully be resolved soon. An amber light is required at the pedestrian crossing from UCC Connacht Avenue. Again, have spoken to roads engineers about that. Typically, an amber flashing light isn't there's no statutory requirement, we'll say, to add additional lights to pedestrian crossings. So that would be something that would maybe need to go. I would suggest that we revisit that. I know there are some works going on in that area. I know I was speaking to John O'Rourke there, the chair of the Cork City, the Cork South Central Safety Forum, and maybe John will speak to this afterwards. I know there are some ongoing works going on O'Donovan's Road, along on CMATS, the Metropolitan Area Transport Strategy. So whether that will evolve as those works continue, I'm not sure. Okay, that's all that I have strictly for this forum, but just in case there's some queries around overlaps, I wanted to speak about just the lock, in case there are people tuning in tonight who are concerned around the lock, and there was some concern around, people drinking in the lock area when the weather was fine around Easter and so on, and maybe some people using the areas around Hartlands Road, Crotamore, Lockview Terrace, for purposes they weren't intended for. Obviously, since then, a gate has been erected at the Lockview Terrace, which has, I think, really ameliorated that situation. It is being monitored, and there hasn't been an issue with crowds gathering in that area over the last few weeks. But, I would certainly say keep in touch if that is an issue that comes up again. And I would say that this is relevant for a few issues. Our customer service unit, the number is 021 492 4000, and it's really important, no more than our colleagues in An Garda Síochána are requesting that issues are reported. If you report something to that CSU unit, you have a reference number, there is a paper trail, you will be able to get updates on what your issues are. So it really helps our colleagues in the likes of parks and cleansing and so on, if you can feed back to that number and we can follow up for you. But as I said, I feel like that gate at Lockview Terrace has really improved the situation there. Yep, I think that's all from me. I hope I've covered everything that people submitted about, but just good to keep, and I'm sure you'll say it again, Adrian, around that CSU number, and maybe you can just chat about the COVID support number as well, or I'm happy to come back in on that as well.
Thanks, Martha. Yeah, I think that's pretty comprehensive based on the submissions that we received. But yeah, I mean, Martha's point about the CSU, we have a CRM system, so whenever somebody logs a call, it goes into the system and we can track and trace it. So we would encourage people, if they do have issues, to report them. And they don't have to report them 5 times. They just have to report them once, but they will be given a reference number and they can use that reference number then if they need to follow up on it subsequently. But it also makes it easier for us to track those calls, if there are issues, and obviously our colleagues in Ops. And all of the things that Martha has spoken about there, we will be following up with our colleagues in operations. So it's not like we're sending these on and we're just hoping they'll all work out for everybody. We will be following up with them and having conversations with them to make sure there's some progress being made. With regard to COVID, I suppose it's just important, I suppose, to remind people as well that COVID, the helpline is still there. It has not gone away, and the community response teams on the ground are still there. So while I know things are opening up and I know people are getting vaccines, I think people are still probably being a bit cautious. And I suppose there could still be people who maybe for one reason or other could be either isolating, self-isolating, or perhaps they're feeling ill, and they should reach out to that COVID helpline. And the number for that is 1800 222 226. So please do remind people that that is still live and it's still operational, and we're still monitoring it and looking at people and reaching out to them. So I suppose, look, what I'd like to do now is maybe hand it over to anybody. So if anybody would like to ask a question or clarification or make a comment, if you could just raise your hand. And Councillor McFinn, you're there first, so I might hand over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Adrian. And briefly, and apologies, I'm actually ringing from the car because I'm on work duties elsewhere. Can I firstly just thank the Gardaí and obviously people in the council for organising these meetings, but particularly Colum and the community Gardaí for the work they're doing around the loch and around the college. It's been very taxing on them really since February, but they've responded really well. I suppose the question about the movement of people and the the management of alcohol in public places is an ongoing one for people in the loch area, in the college area, because it's not just confined to COVID. The problem is kind of all year round, and I suppose that's where that query is coming from. And I appreciate he can't answer whether it'll still be enforced for the summer, but I envisage that if the weather is good, and it will continue to be a problem. Maybe not as great as a problem as it was in March, April. But I think that continues to be, that needs to be monitored. Can I also say at the outset and just pass on our good wishes to the Gardaí in Dublin, your colleagues in Dublin after the incident last night, and we hope that it shows the kind of pressures that they work under, and I think we all appreciate the fantastic work that's been done in our communities, and I'd like to thank them for it. And I just think, my last comment regarding the lock and the gate has proven to be very successful in Lockview Terrace, but it has pushed the problem elsewhere in the area which we kind of envisaged and which was a fear. And I think that's something we need to continue to watch, particularly on good days. But I think, a lot of the problems are related to students who had nowhere to go within the 5Ks, students who are, still living in Cork despite the fact that a lot of stuff was being online from elsewhere. That will dissipate over the summer, but it could continue again in September, October. So I just think we need to continue to be vigilant. But thanks for all the work that's been done today.
Thanks, Councillor Finn. So can I move next to, I'm sorry, I might take maybe 3 people at a time, and then we'll answer, we can ask the Garda ourselves to respond. So could I now move to Councillor Shane O'Callaghan?
Thanks, Adrian, and thank you and yourself and Martha and Colin for your detailed presentations. You've actually already addressed most of the issues that I was going to raise, and I'd like to thank the Gardaí and council officials for organising these meetings, which I think are very, very positive. Just my question really is, I suppose there has been a dramatic increase in antisocial behaviour, all over the city over the last few months. And in my view, it's likely to get a lot worse as the weather gets better and as COVID restrictions are eased. I think it has the potential to get dramatically worse. And I think that, it's likely that if last summer is anything to go by, that the Magazine Road area, the College Road area, Connacht Avenue, those areas are likely to could be ground zero for antisocial behaviour, public drinking, etc., unless fairly dramatic action is taken pretty soon. And I'd just like to ask Colm in that regard whether it's envisaged that there will be, are they looking at increasing Garda time and resources just over the next 3 or 4 months, we'd say till June to September, to put into, tackling this issue? I think that perhaps an increased Garda presence and coupled with, if necessary, issuing more fines for COVID, breach of COVID restrictions, if the COVID restrictions are still there, or more fines for, public drinking, or even more a couple of prosecutions for antisocial behaviour if things get dramatically out of hand. I think that if a concerted effort is made, particularly over the next few weeks, I think which are going to be crucial. I think it would if you could nip it in the bud and make it clear that things can't get out of hand like they were last summer, I think it could send a message out and make a huge difference in terms of, okay, we appreciate, younger people in particular, they've had a tough time over the last year, as have we all, and they can, enjoy themselves, but in a responsible manner that doesn't interfere with other people and doesn't interfere with local residents. And I think that if the message gets out there pretty early on that there's an increased Garda presence and a willingness to tackle the issue through fines and, as I say, if necessary, prosecutions for antisocial behaviour, I think would make a huge difference. So in conclusion, just ask Colm whether something like that is envisaged in terms of extra Garda resources. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Callan. And thirdly, I might just go to Deputy Donncha O'Leary there, and then I'll maybe ask Colm to respond to those 3.
Thank you. Apologies for the mask now. I hope you can hear me okay. I suppose a few issues there I'd just like to flag. I suppose, to be fair, most of them have been acknowledged there in the submissions. Look, I suppose we're talking about the city centre, and there has been an increase in antisocial behaviour there. There's a whole lot of causes there, but it's a big concern. I know the Gardaí have stepped up their presence in the city centre on Patrick Street and some of the other locations, but we need to keep that up. And I suppose I continue to believe that we need additional resources from the centre, from the Commissioner for Cork. I know there has been an increase in community Gardaí, but that has meant that some of the, I suppose, core unit Gardaí, those positions haven't been backfilled in all stations. And that's meant that, I don't know, is there enough there to do the patrols that we need to do? But to be fair, I think the local Gardaí have done the best they can. I suppose just on some of the more localised issues, there's been a comment there a bit about the lock, and in fairness, the gates, which was something I had looked for in Lockview Terrace, is very welcome, very beneficial. But I do think, and Councillor McFlynn has mentioned this before, I do think we need a bit of a strategy for our parks and our public places like that. There has been issues recently enough in Ballyfian Park as well, which I think is also within the remit of this particular forum. Just to mention there, I suppose, similar issues to Lockview Terrace that have arisen recently and maybe not so recently. The gate there was welcome, but I previously requested, and the residents requested, a gate for Sullivan's Lane on Barrack Street, and it didn't really go anywhere. So I wonder, can we look at that again? They have similar problems. I suppose maybe it might have quietened down now with the pubs not being open, I suppose, in that particular location, but it might revive again. And similarly, Cockpit Lane, some of the staff of the businesses that are connected to Cockpit Lane, which is off North Main Street, between North Main Street and Cornmarket Street, there's a similar issue there. So just to flag those issues, but obviously, look, I suppose with the city centre and the ongoing antisocial behaviour, it's worrying a lot of people about their return to the city centre for retail and for hospitality and things like that, and worrying some of the businesses. I don't think it's beyond us to deal with it, but I do think it's vitally important. Thanks very much. And I really want to welcome that we have this forum again, because the absence of the local police and forums has been a significant loss. So I'm glad that we have this back now. Thanks.
Thanks, Deputy O'Leary, and I might hand over now to Colm, and then maybe Martha, just to respond to the queries, and then I'll take Councillor Terry Shannon, Councillor Dan Boyle and Jan O'Rourke for questions. So over to you, Colm.
Okay, thanks. First of all, Adrian, I should have introduced my team with me here tonight as well, and I overlooked it when I did. I have Inspector Conor Dillon is here with me in Anglesey Street. Sergeant Mick O'Connor, in charge of community policing, is there as well. And Laura O'Connor and Kay Griffin, two of our community guards. Kay is here with us in Anglesey Street, and Laura is over in the Bridewell. And we also have a probationer guard who's just after joining us here. We just asked him to join us tonight as well, just so that he would get an understanding of what happens in these safety forums as well. And that's Barry O'Shea. So they're with us here tonight. And look, just listening to the three people that have spoken there, Councillor Finn, Councillor O'Callaghan and Dr. Doyle, Donica O'Leary. The general theme of, and I'll try and answer, if it's okay with you, I'll try and answer them collectively, because it's all on the same theme of antisocial behaviour and what are the guards doing with it. First of all, and it also feeds into resources. First of all, in relation to our resources, we have what we have at the moment, and I have to work within the resources that are available to us. Having said that, however, we're now working a 12-hour tour of duty, which is increasing the available resources at any one time on the streets to us. In addition to that, on weekends, we have our public order unit specifically deployed on Fridays and Saturdays and on Sundays when necessary in addressing the antisocial behaviour matters that are arising. And when we look at the number of arrests, or when I look at the number of arrests coming out of antisocial behaviour, it's not so much the number of arrests that are made, but it's the volume of people that are actually in the lock or on Kennedy Quay or on the street at any one time. And it gives a perception then of an increase in antisocial behaviour because of the volumes. We must remember that a lot of the premises that these people, and we're not talking of so teenagers, we're talking of people across all age groups that are coming into the city to socialise with the easing of restrictions. And prior to that, when there wasn't the easing of restrictions, when we had fine weather, as we've had today, we had family groupings going to the Loch, going to the Marina, going to Fitzgerald's Park, going to Kennedy Quay, and an awful lot of it was down to the volume of people that were there. And then, unfortunately, there was alcohol mixed into it. And that's what has led to the perception that there's an increase in antisocial behaviour. If a lot of the pubs were open, if a lot of the nightclubs were open, the people that are out in the street, that are drinking in the street, that are drinking the Grand Parade, and I came through the Grand Parade there at 6:15 this evening, and there was a significant volume of people over in the Grand Parade, and it gave a perception that there was something going on, but it was quite calm and it was quite measured. And I have to acknowledge that as well, that the people that are coming into the city centre, not everybody is engaging in antisocial behaviour, and I would hate for it to be believed that Cork City was not a safe place to come into, because if that message gets out across the country, when the country does reopen and when the hotels reopen and when we want tourists coming back into our city to make our city the vibrant city that we want it to be and that it should be, if the message gets out that Cork City isn't a safe place to come to, they won't come, and that will impact on the businesses that are trying to get back into providing a service into our community, and not all the businesses will come back. And I just think that's important to state that. In relation to what we're doing for antisocial behaviour, and I know that fines on the spot were mentioned there, I gave a couple of the figures there earlier on. 888 fines that were issued from early January to the 10th of May, okay, for movement of persons, but that was for people. And the majority of those, 390 of those were issued in the Bridewell area, which would cover the Loch and the College Road. 294 issued in the city centre, Anglesey Street area. 176 for people attending parties up in the houses, predominantly in the College Road area. So you can see we have had strong enforcement there. And somebody said to me recently, but like, you went out to the Loch and you didn't issue tickets. Once we start issuing one ticket, and you must remember, to issue a fine on the spot to somebody, you have to stop to them, you have to talk to them, you have to get their names and address, and next minute all the other people move on. So while I could have 100 people outside the Loch, we might only issue 5 or 6 tickets, because by the time we've got through the process of taking the names and address, identifying the people, the other people that are there have moved on, and we can't tell them stay there until I get your name and address or hold them, because we don't have the authority to do that. So, you know, everything is relative to what is happening at the time. But what we have done on weekends is we have our community policing teams are concentrating on the Loch and College Road area. We've liaised with the Port of Cork, and the Port of Cork have put on extra security down around Kennedy Quay, and we're working with the Port of Cork and managing the Kennedy Quay area, and we have 2 guards down there for most of the evenings now on Kennedy Quay. And then we have our community policing teams, as I said, are addressing the issues in the Loch, the College Road, and the Ballyfihan Park. We have a team then working with the Port of Cork down below on Kennedy Quay, and then the majority of people are in and around the city centre, in and around Fitzgerald's Park, and our frontline policing guards that are on duty. We have, like, for example, last weekend we had 14 guards on the beat in the city centre, plus we had mobile units out as well. Okay, and we also dispersed. We have our city centre policing unit that we're also utilising, and they're the people that you see in the city centre on mountain bikes, but some of those are also involved in plainclothes duties and tackling the underlying issue of street drug dealing or street drug abuse. So, and then we have our public order team that are deployed out on the weekends. Just in relation to one of the concerns of the College Road, and you know, it's what's going to happen during the summer months. Over the last number of weeks, we've been engaging with UCC, MTU, the Residents Association above there, the students' unions, both in MTU and in UCC. And we have actually a meeting scheduled within the next week or so to meet with the outgoing students' union and the incoming students' union, because what has happened in previous years is there's the incoming students union that starts off in July, but the students don't appear until September, and there's 2 months gone. So now we have got the incoming students union representatives to meet with us next week to address issues that may develop so that they can hit the ground running over the summer months to get out the communication amongst their own students that the behaviour, the antisocial behaviour that is occurring, we'll say, with the house parties and the disruption that that's causing to neighbours in and around the Magazine Road area or in any other area, because like students aren't only concentrated in the Magazine Road area, they're all over the city. So this is while there's a strong concentration of them in the Magazine Road area, in and around the lock and so on and so forth, they also move out in towards Bishopstown. They're also out in towards Douglas. They're also over towards, we'll say, the North Mall, Shandon Street, Sunday as well. It's wherever students' accommodation is or where it's any student accommodation. Okay. So what we're trying to do with that is just to get them to have an understanding, working with, as I said, UCC, MTU, the residents' associations and the students' unions, to get them to get the message out to the students that are going to start coming into the city to come in and live in the city prior to September, you know, what is expected of them in terms of their behaviour and respecting their neighbour, and getting them to understand that they have a personal responsibility there to help the people in their communities. Because the last thing we want is, and we have to look at the age profile of some of the people that are living in and around student accommodation, and I'll call them the people that are living there for a long time. Some of those people in their 60s, their 70s, we even have people in their 80s, and they can be quite fearful. And for any of us that would walk over town when we walk in and see a big group of people, there is that element of apprehensiveness. What am I walking into here? And the majority of times it is quite safe. It is people, as we have tonight, on the Grand Parade, sitting down, enjoying the sunshine. And there's no threat there. But it's when things start getting messy, when the alcohol starts to take an effect, it can start to get messy then. And that's why we have our concentration of people then in those areas to deal with it. So I hope that would have answered the 3 of those questions collectively. If I haven't, or if you think I've let something out, come back to me.
Thanks, Colin. And Martha, did you just want to speak to
Yeah,
Deputy O'Leary?
I was supposed just to say, Deputy O'Leary, I've taken note of your suggestion on Sullivan's Lane and Cockpit Lane, and I'll follow up with colleagues in operations. Thanks for that input.
Thank you for that. So could I call on Councillor Shannon?
Thanks, Adrian, and thanks to you and Martha for coordinating this meeting. As has been said, it's great to see the community fora back up and running, albeit on the net. And could I just take the opportunity just to thank the guards, Colm and his team, for what they're doing. We have tremendous community guards around the city, particularly the people that I deal with in Douglas and in Ballinlough and in the Mahon area. And, you know, they're absolutely fantastic. And you know, the work that they do, many of it behind the scenes, you know, and even during the pandemic, helping out elderly citizens in many ways, you know. And I think then when we see the incident in Dublin, you know, and I've said it before at JPC meetings, where it's probably one of the only jobs where people put their life in their hands, where they go out in the morning and they mightn't come home that night. And I think what happened in Dublin is a stark reminder of that, and we should be mindful of that. So, you know, the work that the guards do, they need our support, they need our thanks. And I think we're very lucky in Cork that we've had the type of policing that hasn't seen that type of those type of issues we've seen in Limerick and in Dublin happen in Cork at any stage. And I think that's down to the guards and the management and the team we have. And just a few things. And I understand where, Colm, you're coming from in terms of large gatherings, but it is quite intimidating for people. And what I can't understand is, and I'm not saying that you have the powers to do it, but the very idea that you can sell takeaway pints is an absolute nonsense. We have bylaws in the city where you can't drink in public, and they're being flouted left, right and centre. And I understand the guards aren't in a position to fine everybody and take the drink off everybody. But we can see what's happening around the city, where people are going from pub to pub and drinking on the street, and then the antisocial behaviour that follows. And particularly we've seen it in Kennedy Quay and down around Kennedy Park and that area, where residents, and they've been in touch with me, you know, feel intimidated. They can't go outside their door. There's noise, people urinating in their gardens. And, you know, it's just incredible. But I agree, we've got to be mindful that we still have a very safe city. And I don't think we want a message to go out that we haven't. But I think we do need to have something in place, as Shane O'Callaghan said, particularly for the summer, where we can tackle the type of antisocial behaviour that may arise. And, you know, the bush drinking that we've seen in suburbia as well. And I'd hope that we will have some sort of a plan in place for the summer for that. The other issue I just want to raise as well is the contact for the guards. I had the occasion over last weekend to ring the guards because a number of travellers were breaking into St. Michael's GA Club, and I rang Toker and I rang the control room in Anglesey Street, and both phones rang out, and I had to ring the 999 number to get a response, and there was a very good response afterwards, and I met the guards down there. So I don't know whether that's a manpower issue or what that issue is, but clearly if we're being asked to ring the guards and not use the 999 call, which I was loath to do, may I add, then clearly, you know, we have to have someone, you know, maybe I rang at the wrong time, I don't know, but both phones rang out, and that surprised me, you know. Thanks, Adrian.
Thanks, Councillor Shannon. And could I move now to Councillor Dan Boyle?
Thanks, Adrienne. I welcome to the resumption of the Community Safety Forum. I think it's something we've missed in the last year, and I think it's a very useful forum for airing the concerns that people have, both the safety and the appearance of their community. I was at the lock today, and now that we've got a bit of warmth again, it was good to see a lot of people enjoying themselves there. So I think recent measures have been helping. I'd like to ask Colin and the other members of the Guards here that I'm presuming that there'll be a review as the situation evolves, that on June 7th and 8th we'll have outdoor dining and outdoor drinking. That'll necessitate a change of approach, and sometime in July when all the facilities will be open and the nature of policing itself will be changed. So maybe a comment on that, particularly as it relates to the city centre area, a city centre that we're trying to encourage a different type of interaction with the pedestrianisation and the new cycle lane routes. And my second question, Adrienne, would be, I can appreciate that the Guards have a difficult task in using their resources, and the more that goes into dealing with antisocial behaviour, that less time and people who are available for other aspects of policing, and there are ongoing concerns with things like bad parking, for instance, parking on footpaths, obstructing carriageways for people with prams and people in wheelchairs and older people, as we're trying to move to the new type of city centre in particular, I'd like to give some kind of attention in particular, and working with the traffic wardens and the city council to make sure that on a 24/7 basis, that when the wardens aren't there, that the Guards might be able to fill the gap when they're not consumed with other public order duties, to look at that as a particular area that we need to encourage better behaviour in. Thanks, Adrienne.
Thanks, Councillor Boyle. And I might go now to Jan O'Rourke, if you want to come in there, Jan, and then maybe we might respond to those three questioners, and then I'll take Councillor McCarthy, Councillor Deneen and Deputy Gould. So Jan, if you'd like to come in there.
Okay, can you hear me all right? Okay.
Yep.
First of all, it's great to have the forum up and running again, because it's a very essential part of our residents' meetings. It's always on the agenda. There'll be some report back from it, and always feedback that the members of our residents' association, something for everybody there. Now, issues. There was one issue there tonight in particular, the lighting in the park. I know Martha dwelt on it, but we've been campaigning about that for 2 years, and the problem there is there's a very dark corner in that avenue and in the park itself, and there's a lot of antisocial behaviour going on there. For the first time ever, we have a number of young children, and they tend to drift in there at certain times, but hopefully not at night. The big problem there is that, except that the Gardaí are always prompt in coming, and we're very lucky to have Peter and Trish around the place because they're always at our beck and call when they're on duty. Another area is, of course, Dermot's Road, and there's that famous amber light. It's not as simple, engineers say it's not necessary. They don't realise the situation that's there. A few years ago, there was a very serious accident. Now, I asked the Students' Union through the UCC, and they did a survey. Coming down on a Thursday morning, 28% of the cars stopped. Going up that particular morning, up the hill, down Dermot's Road, 47%. No, that shows straight away. They've now introduced a cycle lane on the Connacht Avenue side, and what has happened there is we have elderly people going for the bus, and they're crossing exactly at that in that position. Now, bicycles are travelling very quickly now, and if they step out, they could be blown off the road. And then just beyond it, you have a bus stop on the right-hand side as you exit Connacht Avenue and go down to the right. Directly across the road is the bus stop for going into town. And what has happened in the last fortnight, which is very upsetting for the residents of our avenue, is that bicycle racks are being erected, 30 of them. We have no problem in Connacht Avenue to bicycle racks. There are areas in Connacht Avenue, particularly in the park, where they would not even be interfering with the traffic itself. They wouldn't be coming out on the edge, yet they're landed on us. Now, we've had a meeting with councillors last night, and they were very helpful, but we have now identified 2 areas in our avenue where those 30 the racks that are there should be moved, and we think the sooner the better. When people try to exit onto Dunham's Road now from Connacht Avenue and turn down to the right, the first thing they have is there's a bus stop. Across the road is another bus stop. Then people coming out of the Honan, and as well as that, coming around to exit, visibility will be difficult. So I will appeal to this meeting tonight. And I've been asked, and I'm chair of our Residents Association as chair, to try and do something on our behalf, because while the councillors are doing their best, we've invited comment from practically all the residents in the avenue, and they're all negative as regards what's being done. They're positive with the area that we were suggesting, and it is quite adjacent to the Honan and quite adjacent to UCC. I don't want to take any more of your time, but on the plus side, I asked the Little Warden to come up, and he checked an area where graffiti was on the wall for, I'd say, 2 years. And today I saw that it has been cleared. So sorry for taking up so much of your time, but I think that Dermot's Road issue is very serious where we are concerned. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jan, and please don't apologise. I mean, we're here because of the community, so we're delighted to have your input, and thank you for that. So look, Colm, I might hand over to you, and then maybe Martha, if there's any comments you want to make in relation to Councillor Shannon, Councillor Boyle and Jan's comments there. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Adrian. First of all, Councillor Shannon and also Councillor Finn, you mentioned as well, I'd just like to thank you for the comments you passed there in relation to, the difficulties that the Gardaí are faced when they're out on duty, in particular, as when we look at what happened in last night. I suppose as an organisation, we've been fortunate that it could have been a fatality. There could have been a double fatality there, but thankfully whoever was on their side last night, someone was on their side that gave them the level of protection that they required, and they should make a reasonably good recovery, and we're thankful for that, and I'd just like to thank you for your comments. Coming back to what you said there, Councillor Shanahan, in relation to the selling takeaway points. Look, the law states that it can be done, and so in terms of enforcement, then it's very difficult, because if when a licence permits something to be done, it can be done. drinking on the streets, and I'm going to say something now, but before anybody jumps down my throat, I'll clarify it as well. Drinking on the street in a large portion of this country is not illegal. And under the primary legislation, it is not illegal. It is local authorities brought in bylaws to stop it. Okay, Cork City Council have brought in bylaws, and we are enforcing those bylaws in that we take the name and address of the person, we seize the alcohol is disposed of. When I say it's disposed of, it's poured down the drain there and then. A notice goes into the City Council, and the City Council then issue a fine on the spot. If the fine on the spot isn't paid, we then are notified by the City Council that the fine on the spot hasn't been paid, and we then issue a court proceedings. At the moment, I think the fine off the top of my head is €75, and in court then a fine of up to €500 can be imposed. Those bylaws were adopted in 2001. There were a couple of changes made to them between 2001 and 2011. And, you know, at the moment, ourselves and the City Council are looking at those again to see how they brought up to date to fit 2021. You know, they've been there since 20 years now at this stage. But from a Garda perspective, we have and continue to engage with the publicans that are involved in this, in trying to talk to them in terms of their sense of community responsibility and the impact that is having on communities such as down below in Kennedy Quay, such as up in the Loch, such as out in Fitzgerald's Park, such as inside in the Grand Parade. You know, so we continue to liaise with the publicans, but we have to acknowledge as well that the publicans have to try and make a living in the tough times that COVID has brought to us over the last 14 or 16 months now at this stage nearly. And it's just trying to get that balance. And consistently, I would say that the balance, first of all, starts with the people themselves, that people that are coming into the city do have that personal responsibility, and collectively, ourselves in Garda Síochána, the City Council, and the people that are on this Zoom call tonight, the councillors that are there, the Community Association, we have constantly stated that we would encourage all of us to talk to the people and get that perspective of community spirit that we've always had in Ireland, to try and rekindle that for the good of all our communities together. And I mentioned a while ago in terms of the impact that this behaviour can have on the city, you know, and the negative connotations that it can have in the city, and do we really want that for the city? And that's where the personal responsibility of the individuals comes in, and that's something that I think that we should we do it as in Garda Síochána when we're talking to people. And I would ask the councillors here today that when they're engaging with people, just to stress the importance of the personal responsibility for the benefit of the communities and the benefit of the city in recovery. Okay, in relation to what you said about Toker and Anglesey Street, we have options. And when I say we have options, as a superintendent here, I have options. Do I have the people outside in the streets dealing with the antisocial behaviour and the public order issues that are arriving, or do I have 3 or 4 people inside answering phones? And it's trying to get that balance. And I would rather have the people outside in the street. And so if I have one guard inside in the station, and they're answering the phone and they're taking the report of something at the same time as you're making your report, that's why the phone isn't answered. But then I could have 2 or 3 guards out in the street. So, you know, it's about getting that balance right. And unfortunately, at times, if they're dealing with a person who's on the phone or a person who's come into the counter that's reporting a serious incident, the phone may not be answered at the precise time you ring, but if you ring back, it should be answered. And you did the right thing then the other night at that point when you couldn't get the answer from the station, you rang 999. And that's what I would say to people to do. But the 999, as I said earlier, should be for the emergency. But look, the 24-hour stations again in the city are Anglesey Street, the Bridewell, Mayfield, Grona and Toker. There's no point in ringing Douglas. There's no point in ringing Blackrock because those stations will close early in the evening. So that station may be closed at that time, but the 24-hour stations are the stations to go to. in relation to what Councillor Boyle said there in the evolving situation. And even when we're on this call tonight, I can see stuff coming up on the phone there next to me in terms of announcements that are being made in terms of the reopening of the city or a reopening of the country, in the terms of the reopening of the hospitality sector and so on and so forth. And they're saying, you know, Fault Ireland says new guidelines. I'm just looking at it here at the moment. New guidelines for the next restaurant visit and hotel visit. We're going to analyse those. We're going to look at them and see what responses we need. Like last year, we were very actively involved with the business associations in the city, with the city council, in developing the pedestrianisation of the city centre, so that those businesses could develop, and you could have the eat on the street in Princess Street. You can have it in Oliver Plunkett Street. You can have it up on McCurtain Street. You can have it out in Washington Street. And that is all feeding into the redevelopment and the reopening of the city. And, you know, it's like if we have a match below in Park Queeve, okay, the guards planned for that based on what's going to happen at that match. How many people are going to be in attendance? What's our estimation of attendance? And we look at that and we'll do exactly the same as the situation involves and as we know more about what's going to happen in the coming days and the coming weeks. You mentioned in relation to parking, and look, I won't deny it, it is an issue. Parking on footpaths, parking on cycle paths is an issue, and I know that it has been raised here with me in terms of some emergency vehicles that are parking on cycle lanes or parking on footpaths. And the one thing I would say to that when whether it's an ambulance, whether it's a fire brigade, whether it's a Garda car, and when they're responding to an emergency, of course there may be inconvenience to other road users at that time, but we have to look at what they're trying to achieve at that particular time. Like, I'm not going to ask an ambulance to move off a footpath when they're attending to a person who's after suffering a cardiac arrest, as we had over on South Main Street 2 weeks ago. And the street was completely blocked by emergency vehicles. But likewise, if they're not dealing with an emergency, they should park in an appropriate manner. But then, and I don't think that was the point that you were raising, but it had been raised as part of the submissions that had come in to the City Council for this meeting here tonight. But one thing that I would say, and you mentioned about the guards filling the gap, you know, when the traffic wardens aren't there, and the guards do fill the gap, but our system is slightly different. A lot of our guards now have what's known as, and you might see it advertised as, the mobility app. And I know that the Garda press office are very active in their Twitter feed and getting out information about the mobility app. And the ticket is created on the mobility app, okay, but nothing goes on the car. So if you see a car badly parked, it doesn't mean that the guards haven't issued a ticket to it. It's that we don't affix a notice to the car like we used to long ago. So, and that then gives a perception that no ticket has been issued, but that may not necessarily be the case. Okay, and John, in relation to Donovan's Road, I think I'll leave Mark to deal with that there in relation to lighting and the bus issues up there. Okay.
Thanks, Colin. I'll hand over to you there, Martha. I suppose just before the bad parking piece, yeah, our colleague David Joyce, Director of Services and Operations, is well aware of the issues there. Look, it's people really, it's like antisocial behaviour. You know, we all know what the right thing to do is, but we don't all do it. And I suppose just in relation to the bylaws, they are being looked at the moment in relation to the drinking. So as Colin had said, they are out of date. So look, I'll just hand over to you there, Martha.
Yeah, I suppose thanks a million, John, and completely appreciate that it's a really big part of your role as chair of two safety forums to bring these issues to the fore. I've actually had a number of councillors on to me since, just to reiterate what you've been saying, that it has been an area of concern for quite a while. So I suppose I can't give you any further updates just now, John, but I'll be in touch with you as chair of that safety forum, and I can speak to my colleagues in roads and traffic, if that's okay, John.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Martha. Yeah.
Thanks, Martha. So if I could go next to Councillor Kieran McCarthy, and then I'll take Councillor Paddy Dineen and then Deputy Gould. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Adrian, and thanks very much for everyone for organising this evening. I always find the community policing forums are of huge use, and I know they're very much appreciated by communities right throughout the city. I do agree with Colm's point that a balance needs to be struck between pubs reopening and the ask on them to use space outside their premises, but then weighing that up against crowds congregating outside, and crowds do come across as intimidating and loud. So I suppose my question would be, when will these reimagined drinking bylaws be put out to public consultation? Because I think they need to be put out as soon as possible so that we're all on the same track of thinking, guards, public, city council, other stakeholders. Because I think at the moment we're slightly ajar, and that could be open to legal interpretation by people as well, abusing the system. And I do agree with Colm's point on that word responsibility, and self-responsibility is crucial. And I do think that of all the summers that there needs to be a strong Garda presence is probably this summer. I think Colm hit the nail on the head, like that the economy is reopening. People want to come into their city centre and they want to be safe. And my experience of working with the community guards, like Terry Shannon, my own area, and talk to community guards in the city centre that do a fantastic job, but sometimes that message doesn't get out there to the general public. I've been listening for a few mornings on local radio stations last week in particular, that the city isn't safe, and there's national coverage, the city isn't safe. And I'm kind of going, it is safe, but the message, there needs to be a stronger message get out there that come into the city, you're welcome, there is a Garda presence. So I think that needs to be done. So I suppose my question is just around, when do we hope that we will be reimagining the drinking bylaws? Because I suppose whether we like it or not, the world of Cork City Centre has just evolved. Like they'll be drinking and eating outside next summer or this autumn. We're not, like, the city isn't going backwards, it's actually kind of moving forward into a new way of thinking. I think COVID has just sped up a way of reimagining the city centre. And in fairness to Cork City Council, it is moving with the times. And in fairness to the patients, the general public have been very patient as well with changes within the city centre. So yeah, my question is just on reimagining the bylaws and a timeline and so on. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor McCarthy. And if I could go to Councillor Paddy Deneen there.
Yeah, thanks, Adrian, and hi to everyone. It's good to have the Safety Forum back again, I have to say. It's one of the better meetings that we attend, and because it's one that can be productive. I think on the spot productivity is what we get from the Safety Forums, so it's good to have everyone back. Just to touch on a few things, just with regard to the antisocial behaviour when people are on about the gathering of people. Like, we have to keep in mind that the last 12 or 14 months have been very difficult for a lot of people. We've had a different world completely to what we were used to. The hospitality sector is closed for almost 8 months now, and that's just since October. Plus, we had before that, so people are socially deprived of companionship and friendship. And once you get the good weather, they will come out and they will try to socialise and try to get some sort of normality back into their life. And I do agree with Colm that of the crowds that do gather in these areas, 98% are genuine, regular people, just like ourselves, who mean no harm and just have a couple of drinks, have a few chats, and disperse. But you do get the 2%, and I think the Gardaí are doing that, and they deal with that. And I have to compliment the Gardaí on the work that they do. It's obviously a very difficult job, and they're trying to balance what's right and what's wrong, and trying to get something. Like, nobody wants to be a party pooper, I guess, in any sense. But if that's even the right way to put it, but there has to be a balance and a common sense approach to everything in this day and age with the world we're living in at present, and hopefully with the hospitality opening up come June 7th, that will change for the better of all. I guess I'll stick with the antisocial behaviour again for a little bit. I guess we're getting the wrong impression as well with regard to what's happening with the crowds. Like, the main problem we've had with that are toilets. Basically, some place for people to go, and it's the lack of that. And I think the last number of months has raised that issue within council, And only a number of weeks ago, a policy document has come to council that we've adopted to go forward, and we now have WCs now will be on the agenda from here on. So that's something that will be dealt with. So it'll be good into the future. With regard to the College Road area, as that's been mentioned a bit, College Road, Magazine Road, and Connaught Avenue, Highfield Avenue, etc., all these areas, it would be wrong for us to put the two together, the Lock, the Mardyke, the Marina, the Grand Parade, because their problems up there are ongoing. It's an ongoing issue completely for years and years and years, and it will continue after COVID. When that's all over, they will continue to go on. And there was a mention will ago of the Cork City Development Plan, and it's now indeed the stage where we as councillors, it's now in our area where we now can put in our amendments. And I think it would be cognizant of us all to ensure that we do something to ensure that there is safeguards put in place to protect the residents and the communities in these areas. And it's an imperative that we do that collectively as a group of councillors together. With regard to the dog fouling and the litter that was mentioned earlier, there's also, when I was the chair, there was also dog walking zones introduced a number of years ago. There's one in Ballyfihan and one up in Mayfield. And I think we should start promoting that a bit more, because people are of the impression that there's no bins, and when there's no bins, it's basically their excuse to dispose of dog poo in a bag for some reason. So we need to start promoting that a little bit more, I think, and get people to realize that we do have the dog walking zones available, although they come out in a pilot scheme. But we should also look at the dog walking areas where the dogs can be left off leash in the like Tomorrow Valley Park, etc. So we need to start pushing that agenda a bit more. One there as well for our deputies who were online with us there. John O'Rourke mentioned that there about the city bike scheme being put into Connaught Avenue, the 30 bike placements. And I should just bring it to your attention that this is all coming through the National Transport Authority's regime and under their remit. And what's worrying about all this is that it all happened without any consultation with local councillors or local residents. None whatsoever. They came in the Monday morning and started digging up the footpath. No one knew, none of us were any the wiser of what was happening. And I think for it to happen in such a way that it's an affront on local democracy in a way, like we are elected members of City Council, we're elected to represent the residents and the citizens of the city. And yet we get no spoke on an issue like that has a lot of concerns for the residents up there. And hopefully we can get it resolved going forward. But I want to just raise that with the deputies that you should bring this forward, guys. We need the consultation because democracy is being eroded away from us in some way. I think that's about it really. Just to commend everyone for your participation and the Gardaí for the hard work that they do. I know it's a tough job out there at the minute, and hopefully with hospitality opening on June 7th, that the issues that we're facing at current and we're discussing will dissipate in time with the reopening of society. So thanks again to everyone. Cheers.
Thanks, Councillor Deneen. And I might hand over there to you, Colm, if there's any issues there that you wanted to address.
Sorry, Adrian, could I come in there?
Sorry, Deputy Gould. Your hand went down for some reason on my screen, so apologies. Go ahead.
No problem. Yeah, listen, I just want to thank everyone for getting these meetings back online. I think they're very worthwhile. I was on the Northside one last night, which was a very good meeting. I suppose just like other councillors, I want to thank the Gardaí and the council staff for all their work over the last 12 months. They're frontline workers and for keeping services and keeping people safe. And without the vaccine, I think there's great credit to you. And I suppose also in relation to the two Gardaí that were injured last night, I suppose our sympathy goes out to the force, and in particular those Gardaí and their family. Just a few things I'd like to raise. I'm going to have to run now because we have a vote shortly, but I just wanted to say that, yeah, I know there's a balance to be had in relation to antisocial behaviour and our comments that we don't scare people out of the city or we don't give different parts of the city a bad reputation. There's a balance to be had in that. But part of the problem in that is, like, I've seen it myself. I was inside Cork Street 3 weeks ago on a Friday night. Can I say that the hospitality service that was down there was excellent, and when the guards came and asked them to close, they shut down. There was no issues, and it was all done in. It was I enjoyed walking around the city that night. But near the end of the night, there must have been 50 or 60 young people came through in a wave, and there must have been maybe 6 or 7 guards around them, whether they were trying to break them up or escort them out of the city centre. Well, I think a couple of people said it earlier, it can be very intimidating for people when you see a group of 20, 30, 40, 50 young people or even older people coming together, and you're out just for a walk, or if you're living in an area. So, and Colm, you said earlier there that last weekend there was 14 Gardaí on patrol in the city centre, plus the units in the car. For the type of society we have now, where everyone outdoor drinking and dining, it's not enough. And it's not a criticism of yourself, it's just the fact, because of the outdoor drinking and dining now and people being outdoor, and you made a point yourself in relation to people that normally would be in bars and restaurants and nightclubs, they're now all on the streets. Now, I know not everyone is in town, but Cork is quite a small place, Cork City Centre. And when you're dealing with thousands of people eating and drinking out, or even having a coffee, it's just the volume of people. And I hear what you said earlier about the vast majority of people are well behaved, and they are, and people are having fun, and people need social interaction, and I welcome that and I'd encourage it. But the only way then to prevent the antisocial behaviour is to have a very strong Garda presence on the ground, and to have a zero tolerance of any messing. That anyone that is behaving, there needs to be a clear message go out from the Gardaí that it won't be tolerated. And I think all the public reps have said it here tonight. There are serious concerns over the summer, because what's going to happen now when businesses reopen the hospitality sector, a lot of people will still choose to eat or drink outside. So it's not just going to people, everyone's going to go back into the pubs and the restaurants and nightclubs. A lot of people will still choose to stay outside. And to me, that's going to have to be managed. It's going to have to be policed. And I just hope you can get the resources you need to do that. Like, I'm not trying to be negative. I think the Gardaí are doing great work in the city council, but it's challenging. And I think the way the council operates, and a few points I just make there about street cleaning, additional street cleaning, more bins, more emptying of the bins, and the point there that was made earlier about disabled people accessing the city. We have to have the city open to everyone. Now, apologies, I'll have to run in a minute. I'll try to get as much of the comments as I can. But I just want to thank everyone. I think it's a very positive meeting, and I'm looking forward to when we can do these in person, because sometimes you lose something in translation at these Zoom and Teams meetings. So, Caramagat.
Thanks, Deputy Gould. We appreciate that. So, Colm, I might hand over to you there. And
Okay,
there's one or two issues that we can come back to.
Yeah, so look, first of all, seeing as Deputy Gould has to go, I might address the things that he raised first. And again, thank you for your comments there in relation to our colleagues in Dublin, and in general, the comments that you've made. And you spoke about 3 weeks ago on Cork Street and the 50 to 60 young people that came in. We looked at that and we examined that very, very closely. And what we discovered, and I know Chief Superintendent McPolan spoke about it at the Joint Policing Committee meeting in the county, a lot of those were kids that were dropped in by their parents from outside the city. They came from Middleton, they came from Carrigtwohill, they came from Youghal, they came from Bandon, Macroom, and to sort of dropped up into the city to meet with their friends and so on and so forth. And that's something that we're addressing with those people, with their parents and so on. And again, the responsibility of the parents in knowing where their kids are, right? And the 14 Gardaí that were in the street, there were 14 Gardaí working out of Anglesey Street Garda Station, and they were 14 guards in uniform. It didn't include our city centre police unit, which were another 4 Gardaí. The public order team were there on top of that, which was another 8 Gardaí. And then we had our drug squad units, our plainclothes units and so on. So they all complemented the 14 yellow jackets, as I'll say, on the street. And in addition to that, then there were the members in Blackrock were on duty, Toker, Douglas, Bishopstown, Glenmire. So it's not when I gave a figure of 14, that was literally 14 in Grand Parade, Oliver Plunkett Street, Patrick Street, that area of the city. It wasn't the city in general. And look, we are planning for the summer, but we need to know what is happening in terms of the reopening. And once we know in greater detail, that will dictate then how we need to ramp up our response or reduce it down as the case may be. Moving on to what Councillor Deneen, because I'm going in reverse now, if you don't mind, what Councillor Deneen said again in relation to antisocial behaviour and over the last 12 months has been difficult. You're correct, it has been difficult. It has been difficult for everyone. And I don't want you to think that I was lodging or lumping the College Road and Magazine Road in with the other issues in the city. I was talking on a general basis of what's happening in the city centre. I accept that there are ongoing issues with you know what the residents in that area with the student accommodation are going through. But again, we're working with the colleges. I've explained that we're working with the Students' Union, and we're in early this year with the Students' Union to get them involved from a very, very early stage and address the issues. And I suppose one of the things and what we learned from last year is after Leaving Cert, a lot of the students go off to Spain or wherever on their holidays. That didn't happen last year. It's not going to happen this year. And where did they end up? They ended up inside in College Road area. Okay, so you know that is a concern, and we're working, and our community policing teams are working with the landlords above there in trying to hopefully that may not happen this year. But I can't tell a landlord who they can and who they cannot sell their or rent their house to, nor should we even attempt to do that. You know, so look, it's just something that we're going to manage. Somebody mentioned about the Councillor McCarthy, you said about when the bylaws will be published. They're being worked on at the moment. You know, just look at, and look, when these are reviewed, it may be seen that they're fit for purpose or they need to be improved. But they're being looked at the moment, they're being worked on, and I don't know, Adrian, you might be able to come in there and give a time frame on it, but they're certainly being looked at. And, you know, again, you spoke about the antisocial behaviour and the strong Garda presence. Throughout this, since last March, when this pandemic started, we adopted an approach of engage, explain, encourage and enforce. And it has been very, very successful for us across the country in terms of we haven't lost our relationship with the community. And it's important that as Gardaí, and like our mission statement is keeping people safe. How do we keep people safe? We do it through our engagement with the community. And it was very refreshing here for me tonight to hear the councillors coming on and you know, complimenting us for what we've done. And I can't remember who said it, but somebody mentioned about the great work that has been done. But we mustn't lose sight, me as a superintendent of the Garda organisation mustn't lose sight either. That wouldn't have been achieved only for the cooperation that we got from our councillors, from our city councillors, from our residents association and from our communities in general. And it would be terrible to lose that relationship. And it's important that we all maintain that working relationship, because it's by that we can talk about issues such as coming in these forums, meeting, discussing and coming to a consensus on how to resolve it. And I think if we can take anything out of tonight, you know, it's great for us to come on these forums and listen to the concerns. And the general concern here tonight has been in relation to antisocial behaviour and how we're going to address what could happen with the country reopening in the weeks and months to come. But like the Garda organisation has always been very resilient. We've always stepped up to the challenge, and I can assure you we will do here again. And our engagement with the local authority and with the councillors is something that we can work on, we can develop, and with our communities to reopen the city for the benefit of the entire community within the city and make Cork City the vibrant community where people will want to come into, because ultimately that will benefit everybody. It will benefit the shopkeepers. It will encourage people to invest in the city centre, encourage new businesses to come into the city centre. And that's what we're trying to do, keep people safe and develop the entire city so that everybody can live in peace and harmony and in comfort. Okay.
Thanks, Colm. And sure, look, I mean, it's true to say that the community Gardaí were at the heart of the community response forum across the cities, and they did fantastic work. So, you know, I mean, they did everything, you know, from getting the prescriptions and bringing the food. I mean, whatever it was needed to be done. So the relationship there is really strong, and obviously we need to maintain and build on that. Just
Yes.
Councillor McCarthy, with regards to a date and a timeline. I don't have a date and a timeline for you, but I can find it. I'll check with Paul Moynihan, Corporate Affairs. Councillor Deneen, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, just a point of clarification, just with regard to the Cottage Road area, Connaught Avenue. My point there was with regard to the Cork City Development Plan column. It wasn't a Garda. I wasn't saying as a Garda issue that we in order to ensure that we have a family-friendly, sustainable communities going forward, we need to ensure that we have safeguards put in place in our community development, in our city development plan, to ensure that happens into the future. It wasn't a Garda thing. It was just the our job is
that's great.
to do that. Yeah.
No, that's grand, Paddy. Thanks a million.
From all parties and all of us together should be coming together to do that. You know. Thanks, Colm.
Thanks, Councillor Deneen. And Jan O'Rourke, you have your hand up there. Do you want to come in?
Just a final comment there, because I live on the doorstep of UCC. Now, I didn't want to take too long tonight on it, but what is actually happening is that I spoke to 3 landlords this week, and they told me if they had 20, 30 more houses, they could rent them. It's not, by and large, it won't be students of UCC we'll have. It will be people that are coming in for a month or 2, and they'll live practically out of the off licenses. And then that is where the problems that we've seen for many, many years. I've been involved in this business now for a long, long time, and it gets worse every year. Thankfully, the Gardaí are doing their best, but I wouldn't blame students always, because there are a lot of the people that will come will not be continuing on to UCC. They'll be gone again the end of August. Thank you anyway for listening.
Thanks, John. And I don't think I have any other hands up. So if everybody's okay, I might bring the meeting to a close, and maybe people might get half an hour of sunshine. Before I finish up, I just want to, on behalf of An Garda Síochána and ourselves, I want to thank the elected representatives, the community sector chairs, and for the communities at large for actually engaging in this process and for all the submissions that they sent in. So thank you for that. Just to let you know that we will be summarising the issues that were covered in the meeting this evening, and we will share that back with everybody, and we will do some follow-up ourselves internally. I suppose another thing that I would ask is we'd like some feedback on the meetings, if you found them useful, if you thought the format was good or not, just to let us know. I suppose going forward, we would like to have another meeting maybe in about 3 months. We don't know whether that'll be physical or virtual, but look, who knows, maybe going forward, people might like to have some kind of a virtual blend with the physical, and maybe in the winter evenings, people might be happy to have their meetings from home and in the summer outside. But look, that's up to, I suppose, the people who are participating here to kind of feedback to us. And without that, I suppose I just want to say thank you all, and good night, and keep safe. All right.
Thanks, Adrian. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye now.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adrian. Bye.